Hi, I'm just going to talk through one of my favorite features inside Excel for modeling. I'm going to use a PMT function to exemplify that. So I'm going to assume you know a little bit about Excel and playing with it, but I'm going to make sure you understand all the bits that you need to work with data tables. So there's a little problem here. How much would you pay on a regular monthly amount if the interest rate was 5%, you had to pay back over 300 months and you wanted to borrow 220,000. You would need to use inside Excel a function called PMT equals PMT, and when you do that you get asked information about the rate, the number of periods and the present value. So the rate in this case is the monthly rate, which is calculated from the APR. So I'm going to C2, comma, number of periods, 300, comma, and the amount I'm borrowing, the present value, is this one here. I've already named that in a previous exercise, so that's why you've got C2, D2 and row input cell. Close the bracket, press enter, and I'm told that that comes to a payment of $1,271.90 per month, and it's negative because you're paying that money out. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to use a function PMT with a data table, and the data table in this case is this area down here. If I can select it correctly, this area here. So this is a data table. It says it's data table up in that name box up there, and in the top left it's got the payment function with all of the parameters written as absolute values. These absolute values, if you click on that, are actually pointing to the cells up here that I showed you earlier on. Now, what makes data tables interesting is the way in which you can supply them with lots of different values. Here across the top, different values for the principal that you want to borrow, and going down here, different values of interest rates, so you can actually play with some different scenarios, and in the middle the amount of monthly money you'd need to pay out for each individual amount of money borrowed and interest rate. And all of these in this table are set for 300 months in this particular case. Now up here you can see that this is the payment function working the same way that we saw it working earlier on. I am just going to make sure that it vanishes for a moment and choose a different thing here. I'm going to choose the accounting thing there, and it vanishes because the accounting's got the same color as the grey there, so there's no magic there, it's just background and foreground same color. Gets it out of the way, looks tidier. So here, where do these values come from? Well, here I've got a little box which I've set up, and I put some values in. If I choose a different value, say 140,000 in there, you can see that this updates away along there. It updates by 15,000 each time, which is this number here. And all I've done there is take this value and say this value is equal to C4, which is that one up there. Okay, and then subsequent entries along here, they're incremented by whatever the value of this thing here is, this particular piece here, 15,000. If I change that to 10,000, you'll see my data table updates itself. Okay. To get that, all I've done is I've gone the previous value, C9, plus the absolute value of C5. In other words, I want to make sure I'm always pointing at that cell there for my increment, and that the relative referencing doesn't move anything. Same thing applies here. This one starts off with a 4.6 here, and it increments by 0.2 each time. And if I change that to 0.25, then my table does that the same way. B10 plus C7, B11 plus C7, and so on. We now come to the part where we actually get the data table to work. And to do that, I need to select all the area in my table, and I will go to the data commands here, go along to what is now classified as a what if analysis. It did have this in a different place in previous versions of Excel. Choose data table, and in the data table I'm going to put in the row input cell. Now the row is this thing along here, going along here from 140,000 to 180,000, and the cell where that's been fed into is this one up here, the principal amount up here. So select that, and it types in an absolute value of E2. The column is these percentages, and that's this one up here, the APR up here. Whoops, a daisy. Let's get that right way around. Let's move down here to the column input, to that. Click on OK, and off you go. It's set up my data table to do all of that. Okay, that's how you do it. Let's do one down here from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this cell here is equal to whatever this cell up here is. Boom. And once again, I can change my formatting to take it off there, put it back onto accounting, and then I can also change the color of that to match the background. Is that right? Yes. So now I can put into these cells here the references that we need. So this cell here is the initial value of the percentage, which is up there. Okay, so I click on that, and it should just, come on, I forgot to put my equal sign in, didn't I? Equals this one here. And the one below that is the one above plus the increment. So it's equals to the one above plus the increment, which is here. And I want to keep that increment as an absolute value. Hit enter, and you can see it's done it correctly. I can now copy this one down to the bottom. Okay. Now across here, this first one's going to be 140,000, which is this one here, equals 140,000. And then the subsequent ones are going to be equal to this one on the left plus the regular increment, which is in this case this one here. And again, I'm going to make it an absolute value by pressing F4 on the keyboard. And then I can just copy this one across, and we are good to go. Now then, because this thing here is using the same formula as this one up here, we should be able to get a data table out of this. So let me just reselect and reborder my table. And then to get the data table to work, I select that whole area. I go to the data menu, choose what if analysis, choose data table. Then I get a box to fill in. The row input cell is, what is the row input cell? It's this one here. The column input cell is this one here. And we should get our data table to come out. And there it is. It's unformatted. And in the next video, I'll explain how I did my formatting to get the pretty table that you can see just above this pretty table here. So that's enough for now. Take care. See you in a minute.